Hello, in this presentation, I'll be explaining multi-factor authentication and introducing how multi-factor authentication works in Azure, and also showcase a demo on how to enable multi-factor authentication in Azure Active Directory. I'm Sajeth Jonathan, a Trainee Security Consultant at Meta Defense Labs, and also a Cybersecurity undergraduate at SLIT. Before we understand multi-factor authentication, let's address the elephant in the room: passwords. Username and passwords are used for authentication, but is it enough only using a password as the only layer of defense mechanism? Passwords tend to be short and very easy to guess. Even if the passwords are complicated, they tend to be reused in many different platforms. Or a user can write it down in a sticky note and place it near their computer. If this happens in an organization, and any other employee walking past this user's computer can easily have a look at this password and impersonate this user in the future. A good solution to this problem is to use password managers, either online or locally stored in the computer. All your passwords are stored in a huge vault behind one strong master password. But what happens if this password manager gets compromised? Even though it's very unlikely, it is still something we have to consider about. But even if you have all your passwords stored in this password manager, it doesn't mean that one of your accounts can still be compromised by any malicious hacker. Then how can an attacker who is thousands of kilometers away from you still manage to hack into your user account? Well, it can start with a data breach. Data breaches are when organizations lose data or it gets stolen from them by any attacker. This data can have the organization's confidential secrets and also can consist of customer details such as your usernames and passwords. Another way is to use social engineering or phishing into tricking the user to compromise their password. Finally, they can use a malware either stored in the user's computer or their smartphone, which can maybe act as a keylogger, recording each keystrokes and sending it back to this attacker. Looking at data breaches, a report by Verizon for the year 2019 showcased that 29% of the breaches involved the use of stolen credentials, and 56% of these took months or longer to discover. It is time to think, is using only passwords just enough? With this in mind, we can look at multi-factor authentication. To understand multi-factor authentication, let's look at what is an authentication factor. It is a category of credential used to verify identity. So this is how you can show the application, or you can show any application that you are who you claim to be. And it is something a claimant must possess or control. The NIST SP800 publication tells that there can be three types of authentication factors. It can be something you know, such as your password or your PIN code, or something you have, such as a smart access card or a hardware token, or something you are, which is used to uniquely identify you, such as a fingerprint or an iris print. Combining all these terms, we can get a clear idea about multi-factor authentication. So multi-factor authentication is when an authentication system or an authenticator uses more than one distinct of the above mentioned authentication factors for successful authentication. It can be one of So usually applications can use one of these types of authentication factors, either a memorized secrets, such as a password and PIN code, or an out-of-band device, which is a device which uses a secondary channel of communication to receive a secret, or a single factor one-time password device. When we increase the authentication factors, it can be hard for a user to log into the system, thus decreasing the usability. So it is better to keep in mind when increasing the number of factors the user needs to log into the system, the usability also decreases. A sweet spot is by using two factors of authentication, such as a username and password as the first factor, and the second factor can be a choice for the user to take, such as an SMS or an authenticate app, or maybe a phone call. So two-factor authentication makes an attack more difficult. Even though an attacker gets to know your password, the attacker still needs to compromise the second factor. And an out-of-band device increases difficulty because it is separate as your primary channel of communication. And this second factor can also notify the user of an attack. For example, if someone tries to log into your application, to an application with your username and password, a OTP token can be sent to your mobile phone over SMS. So in that case, you know that someone has been trying to logging into your account. So you can quickly go and change the password. Now let's look at how multi-factor authentication works in Azure. It can be of these three types, either using a phone call mode or the SMS mode, or using the recommended way, a Microsoft Authenticator app, which can be downloaded to your smartphone. So enough of talking. Let's see how this actually works. To try this along with me, you may need some prerequisites. Obviously, you need an Azure account, an Azure Active Directory license, and an Azure MFA license, and then a Microsoft Authenticator app installed in your mobile phone. In case you do not have an Azure account or do not have any of these licenses, you can still get one for free from azure.microsoft.com. Here you can get a free account for 12 months and you'll get a $200 credit for the first 30 days and plus 12 months of popular free services. So you can create an account here and try the tutorial along with me. Multi-factor authentication in Azure Active Directory can be enforced using conditional access policies. So under the AD section, we can move on to the Security tab. And here we see something called conditional access. So this is a capability of Azure AD that lets you create policies to enable or restrict to certain cloud-based applications. It can either apply to users or a particular set of groups. So with this, we can protect applications such as Azure App Services, Azure AD Application Proxy, and other Microsoft services. So users included in this policy can have other conditions to be met for the policy to be applied, such as the particular country that user is trying to access the application from, or the current platform or device the user is using, even if the user is accessing the cloud application from outside the corporate network. As I mentioned earlier, to configure custom policies, you need an Azure Active Directory Premium license. So let's try to enforce this conditional access policy when users try to log into the Azure portal. So here we can create a new policy and we can name it. So we can assign this particular policy to target users or group. So it can be none of the users, all users, or a particular users or group. I've already created an Active Directory group named MFA test group, and I'll be applying this policy onto this group. So in here, I'll be enforcing this policy on the Azure portal. So I want users to use multi-factor authentication when they try to log into the Azure portal. So here we can select Microsoft Azure Management here. And I won't be setting any conditions here, but just as a quick introduction, I can let the application decide whether to enforce this policy or not, depending on the conditions, depending on the device platform or the location. If, for example, if your company is in US or any other particular country, you wouldn't expect people to log into your cloud services from any other remote countries. Maybe some of your employees can travel to other countries and try to log in from that. But it's very unusual people trying to log in from any other countries which you would least expect to. In that case, you know that something has happened and you want to make sure, you want to have an extra layer of protection. In that case, you can enable the multi-factor authentication. So here I'll be granting this I'll be granting the control to require multi-factor authentication. And then I can enable this policy. So this has created a new policy called MFA test. So now that we have set up multi-factor authentication, let's try it out. We enforce this policy on Azure portal. So the next time the user tries to log into the Azure portal, they'll get an additional prompt to set up authentication. So in here, there are two methods, either the authentication phone, which is your smartphone, or the mobile app, the Microsoft Authenticator app. So in here, we'll use the Microsoft Authenticator app. Under this, you can either approve the process using a notification where you just have to approve or deny, or you can add a verification code. You can prove yourself using a verification code which will be sent to the Authenticator app. So the first method is much more convenient to set this up. So this is the authentication app we have here. To add this account, we would have to go to work or school account and add this. Then we would have to scan this QR code and automatically this would be connected to this Authenticator app. So I've connected it right now. And you can see that there are 6-digit code over here. And this code refreshes every 30 seconds. So this is an additional security feature. So if your code gets compromised, it isn't a big issue because every 30 seconds this would update and the compromised code would be useless after just 30 seconds. So once this has been activated, we will get a verification notification to approve the process. So this is the notification I was talking about. So we can approve this process by clicking approve. Once that is done, as a secondary measure of verification, in case we lose access to the mobile app, we can add our phone number to receive an SMS token in case we cannot use the mobile app for some reason. So I have added my phone number and now we should get access to this application here. So the next time, so once this is set up, now the multi-factor authentication has been set up for this user. So the next time the user tries to log in, let's see how that works out. So when the user tries to log in, we can get a notification here either to approve or deny the process. So we can approve this process here. And if we lose access to this mobile application, we can still sign in using the SMS OTP because we have already provided the phone number also. Now that you have a fair amount of knowledge of how multi-factor works in Azure Active Directory, you can learn more about Azure at Microsoft's own learning platform, Microsoft Learn. Here you can pick roles such as DevOps engineer, data scientist, a security engineer, or a data analyst, and learn more about how Azure works, suiting your job role. And that's it for this presentation. You can email me if you have any questions, and I hope you learned something out of this presentation today. Thank you.